This is a short story that happened to me several years ago, but still affects me to this day. Now, objectively speaking, this may not be the most scary story you've ever heard, but the image is surely burned into my mind and is something I don't think I'll ever forget. School had just ended 3 weeks prior, and my friend and I were hanging out enjoying a surprisingly beautiful summer night. I live in a very quiet little town. There never really is much commotion, or really much of anything going on at all. We have one main school, and our graduating class is tiny compared to most others. Around midnight, we'd gotten pretty sick of playing games and wanted to try something different. He suggested walking around outside to enjoy the beautiful, clear summer night. Without much hesitation, I agreed. It was after midnight in a quiet town, so I figured not much could possibly go wrong. My parents were already asleep, but they trusted me anyway, so sneaking out just to walk probably wouldn't have been a huge issue. We ended up staying out for a couple of hours. We talked about movies, wrestling, what our plans for the rest of the summer would be. Up to this point, it had actually been one of my favorite nights in a long time. Just enjoying the nice breeze, the moonlight, and having a wonderful conversation with my good friend. We were already on our way back home, and probably only about 5 minutes away from my house. We were walking down an extremely dark street. On the right side were some old houses, where 95% of the lights were off, and to our left was only trees with no streetlights at all. My friend pointed out as we were walking that some of the sparse light that was visible was hitting the trees and looked almost like a person. We laughed at first, and were kind of amazed at how much it really did look like a person was there. After a moment more of observation, though, the laughter swiftly faded away as we realized that this was not just a shadow. Like the fools that we were, we decided to explore. I pulled back a few branches and saw that there was actually a woman standing there. She had this huge, disturbing smile on her face. She was old, probably in her 70s, I would guess. The weirdest thing is, she was dressed completely normal and had lots of nice jewelry on as well. She looked exactly like how my grandma would dress for holiday parties. She was just standing there, in the brush, still as a statue, and smiling at us. For a moment, we were just stood there in shock and surprise. In a split second, her smile vanished, and she jumped out, screaming at us and beginning to chase us. We started to run as fast as we could back to the house. When I turned to look back, to my knowledge, she didn't continue to follow us any further. She just stood there with that disturbing smile. I know most people might not find that particularly scary, but in the middle of the night when you find a creepy old lady hiding in the trees and watching you, it really rattles your cage. Nothing else of note came from this incident, but as I mentioned previously, I'll never be able to get the image of her smiling and suddenly screaming and chasing us out of my head. I remember being a teenager and really enjoying those first few weeks of summer break. Sleeping in, staying up late, hanging out with friends, basically just enjoying being out of school and not having to worry about homework or teachers or responsibilities. On this specific night, my parents were out of town for their anniversary. My friend James was coming over for the night, and my brother, who was 20 at the time, was supposed to be there to look after us. It was only for one night after all. Around 1 a.m., James just happened to look out the window and see there were two people standing outside in the middle of the road. They appeared to be looking in through the windows and staring at us. We told my brother, who then decided to go take a look outside. The people had started taking pictures, and it looked like they were snapping photos of us and the inside of our house. My brother really didn't take any of this kind of crap. He went outside and started to yell at the two from our front steps. When he got a bit closer, he could see it was a man and a woman, probably in their 20s, he would guess. The man didn't say anything, but the woman called out, "Oh, we're sorry. We're just trying to take a picture of the moon. It really is beautiful." My brother said he didn't care, and they needed to leave right now. She insisted that he come down there with them and look at the moonlight. Then he would understand. After a brief verbal scuffle, my brother then said, "If you guys don't get out of my property right now, I'm going to make you." He started to approach the couple. Once my brother went further into the street though, the man who was standing in the road rushed up and smacked him right in the head. James and I sat there in disbelief. We didn't know what to do. Clearly, we were only young teenagers, and this guy was attempting to attack my brother. James called the police and explained what was happening. I was having a panic attack, worrying what to do. I looked again, and the man was now kicking him fiercely. The woman stood there, laughing, and seemed to be enjoying it. I covered my eyes, and that's when I heard her suddenly yell, "Run!" My neighbor from across the street ran out with a baseball bat. He didn't connect with the man, but he did try to swing at him. They ran off quickly and were out of sight in a moment. The man helped my brother up and helped him to the door. The cops showed up a few minutes later, and we all gave our statements. Of course, there was nothing that could really be done because none of us could get a good look at the couple in the darkness. Writing this as an adult, I still get a sick feeling in my stomach every time I see the moon on a warm summer night. So the events of this story happened to me several years ago, during the last vacation my family and I ever took during summer break. Every year, we used to drive a couple hours away from my hometown to a beautiful tourist area near the ocean with lots of great seafood. This year was no different really. We decided to leave in the middle of the night when my dad got off work. That meant we would arrive by 7 a.m. and have the entire day to spend at the ocean. The first part of the trip was great actually. I slept for a bit, as did my sister and mom. I live on the northeastern coast of the United States, so for a huge stretch of that trip, it was just trees and mountains. Of what I could see, it was actually very relaxing and soothing to try and sleep to. A little after 3 a.m. though, I was suddenly awoken by my dad, who was loudly shouting some curse words. I asked him what was wrong, and he said in an almost nervous voice, "It's okay, honey, go back to sleep." Without asking any other questions, I closed my eyes. Almost immediately though, my eyes shot open again because my dad was swerving the car erratically. I thought my sister was going to go flying out the window. This is when things started to take a turn for the worse. My mom woke up and yelled at my dad, and that's when we found out what was really happening. My dad told us there had been a Jeep of some kind behind us for about an hour. They were riding right on our tail, and every time my dad tried to switch lanes, they would do so as well. This was in the time before cell phones were hugely popular, so we had no way to contact the police. We decided to stop at the next rest area and call the authorities. We saw a sign that said it would be coming in 2 miles. That seemed like forever away now though, that we knew that whoever this was really messing with us. If they had truly been following us for an hour, then this was more than just some joke. They definitely intended to harm us. The 2 miles came by, and we pulled into the 24-hour rest area. We pulled in right out front, and the Jeep still followed us in. I had never been so scared in my entire life. My mom, sister, and I got out of the car to go inside and call the police, while my dad tried to defend himself. I'll never forget what I saw when I stepped out. It was a navy blue Jeep, and had 5 people inside. They all were wearing white masks that had different smiling artwork on them. All 5 people got out of the car and stood there staring at my dad. One of the figures looked like they were holding a weapon, but I honestly couldn't be sure. I still can't believe the luck of what happened next. A patrol car just happened to pull in that exact moment, and the masked people rushed back into their Jeep and drove off. We flagged the cop down and explained what had happened. We all gave our statement as well. We ended up staying at the rest stop until dawn and continued with the rest of our trip during the day. I wish I could explain the full horror to you of seeing that car full of people with those masks on. Why the hell would they follow us for an entire hour if they were just trying to scare the shit out of us? And what would have happened if that patrol car didn't show up at that exact moment? so I might have a different perspective on summer than most of you. I usually hated the summer. My parents both worked during the day, and that left me to do all the chores every single freaking day. I hated it. My friends were all out doing everything they wanted, while I had to do house and yard work. One particular day, I was tasked with painting the spindles on the front porch, which would probably even take more than one full day to do. While I was out there painting, I heard the loudest noise coming from the street. It sounded like someone was rolling a tool chest down the road or something. I looked over and saw an old guy with a cart that had a bunch of what looked like tools on it. After looking further and putting two and two together, it appeared to be a portable cart to sharpen knives. Having some extra cash and thinking I would do something nice for my parents, I flagged the man down. I ran inside and grabbed the knife block to bring out the knives to be sharpened. I told the man I was doing it for my parents. He looked over at me and whispered in my ear, "Such a nice boy." He completed the sharpening for me, and I gave him the cash. He thanked me and continued down the road, slowly but surely. When my parents got home, I could tell they really appreciated the gesture. I think, though, they were more focused on the painting and how good of a job I'd surprisingly did. That night, I slept in my living room so I could stay up and watch TV without waking my parents up. I had to pause the TV at one point, though, because I began to hear a weird, loud noise. I moved the blinds near the couch and looked outside. I saw that exact same cart from earlier. What the fuck? I looked around, but all I could see was the cart. The man was nowhere to be found. It seemed my dog could tell something was up, though. As I went to turn the back porch light on and let her out, though, I could have sworn I just saw someone shuffle behind the garage. I freaked out, rushed to my dad, and told him what I thought I'd seen. He looked out front and did see the cart, but when he went behind the garage, he didn't find anything. I went to the side door to make sure it was locked, only to find the old man staring directly against it and staring into our home. I screamed for my dad. He ran and came out and confronted the man. I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was yelling like he never had before, shouting expletives all over the place. He called the cops right away, and the cops eventually showed up. They took statements and took the man, who was surprisingly still there, away. I think he was charged with trespassing or something along those lines. It's been years since these events have taken place, and the only thing I can still really visualize are those spindles on the front porch and the old man's face pressed against the side door when I went to go look at it. I don't think I'll ever forget that image, as much as I'd really like to. Anyway, I hope that story spooked a few of you out there. And if not, I hope it at least was a good one to fall asleep to. Summer break is an awesome time to kick back, relax, and even enjoy some traveling. Unfortunately for me, my summer break did not consist of vacationing or kicking back at all. My old roommate Dave was going on vacation with his fiancée, and so he asked me to take care of his golden retriever Millard. Always trying to make a quick buck myself, I quickly accepted. I planned on staying overnight with Millard while Dave would be gone for a couple of nights. Feeling lonely, I asked some of my friends to come over and hang out for a while. We sat outside, ate some wings, and just hung out for a couple hours. I had to work at 6:30 in the morning though, so I kicked them all out at around 11 and decided to go get ready for bed. I put on the TV and made myself comfortable on the living room couch. I started to doze off, and while I was going in and out of sleep, I suddenly heard the doorbell ring. I kind of jolted awake and sat still for a moment. I thought perhaps it was only the TV. Maybe I just woken myself up thinking it was the actual doorbell. That was quickly proven false though, when the doorbell began to ring over and over again. My heart was practically jumping out of my chest. I grabbed my watch and saw it was close to midnight. Who the hell could possibly be at the door at this hour of night? I slowly approached as the bell continued ringing. I could see there was a shady-looking man outside with a backwards ball cap on. He had a big brown bag in his hand as well. I opened the front door a crack while still keeping the chain on. I didn't open the screen door either. I quickly asked the man what he wanted. In a very soft, unconvincing tone, he said this: "Hi, I have your food delivery here." I immediately yelled that I didn't order any food. He proceeded to say my address and then followed with, "That is your address, right? I have your delivery right here." More annoyed than anything else, I told him once more he had the wrong house and slammed the door in his face. I then turned all the lights off. The house I was staying in was a split-level ranch. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's kind of like having a 1.5-story house. The basement is usually a living room and not completely underground either. The windows are about eye level. I went to check on the basement part of the house and was looking out the front windows. The man was just sitting in his car, the car not on, and still parked in my driveway. I was a little bit spooked at this point, so I called my brother to tell him what happened. He told me not to worry too much, and it was probably just some kind of mistake. I agreed and went to check back out the window, only to see the car was still there in the driveway, but the man was no longer inside. I grabbed the dog and locked myself in Dave's bedroom. She barked and growled all night long. I'm not sure if it was because she could hear things outside or because she was stuck in the room with me. I hardly slept a wink that night, and when it was time for me to leave for work, I got ready in the bedroom, then ran out of the house as fast as I could. I had a brief moment of relief when I noticed the car was no longer in the driveway. That soon changed, however, when I turned the corner and saw the car was now parked at the side of the road. I went to work terrified. I blasted my friends that day, asking them if this was some kind of practical joke. They assured me, though, that it was not them. I came back to feed Millard after work with one of my friends, and we noticed footprints circling the house and scratches on the siding where one of the back windows was. It looked like someone had tried to scare me, or perhaps actually tried to break in and had simply been unsuccessful. In hindsight, I realized I probably should have gotten the license plate number, but I just thought I was maybe being paranoid. I could have also asked what company they represented so I could call to see if it was a real order or not. When Dave returned, I brought this event up to him, and he said he'd never had an experience like this. Maybe it was simply a fluke. Maybe the delivery person was pissed they got pranked and now stuck with the bill and decided to take revenge. Or perhaps I was in some real danger. Either way, this is one summer night I still bring up to my friends when they want to hear a freaky story. I'll try to tell this story to the best of my ability, but as my friends could tell you, I have a terrible memory. Some details may be weird because of this. This happened to me when I was 14 years old, and I'm now 27. It was summer break. I can remember it because I was extremely bored and felt like I could literally die from boredom at any moment. My parents went to work every morning, and because of this, I was left home alone to do the chores. I was a trustworthy kid though, so my parents allowed me to do so. The only two rules were to never leave the house and to not use the oven by myself. I lived in a really nice area, other than one extremely old, ugly house on the corner. The house was covered with vines and all sorts of unkempt landscaping everywhere. Well, one summer day, my 14-year-old self thought it was a good idea to go and check out this house. It was during the day, too, so I didn't figure anything could really go wrong. I wanted to see the inside. I wasn't going to steal or anything, I just wanted to see what it looked like. Every day when we used to get off the bus, we would always tell stories about this house being haunted and other spooky stuff like that. Well, when I finally saw my friends again after break, I wanted to tell them about my bravery of going inside the house. I got all black clothes on and thought I was being super sneaky. It was around 12 in the afternoon though, so I probably stood out like a sore thumb and looked like a moron. I approached the front of the house and was surprised to see the door was actually locked. I banged on the door for a second and was able to easily jimmy the lock. I opened the door and my excitement quickly vanished when I was greeted by an elderly man holding a knife toward my face. He looked so old that I almost thought he was a ghost or something. He had a long white beard and Albert Einstein-looking hair. He was wearing a thick red flannel despite it being summer. As soon as I had a split second to process this man holding a knife to my face, I turned and ran as fast as I could. I heard him yell out after me, "That's it, you're dead." I of course had no idea what he meant by that. My 14-year-old heart was beating out of my chest. I was in amazement that somebody actually lived there. I was starting to panic that I was going to get arrested for breaking in. My parents were going to kill me, and I was going to be in so much trouble. Well, sure enough, several minutes later, the police showed up at my house, and my parents were called right away. The cop was really nice, and I explained to them that I thought it was just an abandoned house. What got me in trouble was that old man said I had been terrorizing him for weeks. In truth, that was the first time I'd ever been there, though. According to the old man, he said he'd been hearing my footsteps downstairs in his kitchen when he was trying to sleep. Luckily, I was only 14 and had my parents to defend me and say that was obviously not true. Fast forward about a week, I was grounded for just about my entire life, but most of the dust had now cleared. That was until my doorbell rang. It was the cops again. I explained that I had been home the entire day, and luckily my dad was off that day, and he was there to back up my story. Upon further investigation into the matter, the police found that somebody had been secretly living in the old man's crawlspace for weeks. At night, this person would sneak out, steal the man's food, and use the restroom. The day I broke in, he was suspicious because he'd been hearing a lot of noise the previous night, and when he saw me, he assumed I must be the intruder. The man actually came to talk to my dad and thanked me for breaking in because it helped him figure out what was really going on. So yeah, I had a great story to tell my friends. Sad thing was, I was grounded for the remainder of the summer and was going to have to wait for school to tell them.